Hello and welcome to another episode of Schlock Tactics, the movie podcast where we believe badder is better and aim to watch the shoddy shark movies so that you don't have to. My name is Ash and I'm joined once again by Mark. Oh, hi Mark.
Hello.
Now, for new listeners, what we do here is that we take 2 to 3 films of a similar type or genre and we really pit them against each other, we run them down, we tell you what's bad and what's even worse than that, and at the end we decide which is the worst or the best, depending on how you define that. The last episode that we did, we compared all 3 of the films in the Sleepaway Camp trilogy. But today, it is the end of the summer, it's going to get sharky. We're reviewing The Meg, and we're reviewing The Last Sharknado, subtitle, It's About Time. So this week, it's not so much Schlock Tactics,
it's Shark Tactics.
So that's what we're going to be doing for you this week. So, we wanted to wait till the end of the summer to review these 2 movies. I know Meg's been out a little while, and hopefully you've all seen it since it's a pretty big film. But also it is the end of an era, the very last Sharknado, allegedly. So, first up, we are going to get stuck in to The Last Sharknado, aka Sharknado 6, subtitle, It's About Time. Do you see what they did there?
We did, yeah.
So, I understand, Mark, the only other Sharknado film you'd seen is Sharknado The Fourth Awakens.
Yeah.
Which would be Sharknado 4 for listeners.
When it came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So, I do like to usually plunge you into franchises at very arbitrary points. Like I plunged you into Leprechaun at the 4th series. But you have seen one other Sharknado film. So, what were you expecting from the very last Sharknado, and what were your sort of first impressions of this one to tie up what you'd already sort of seen?
I was expecting non-stop ridiculousness, and that's exactly what I got. It was probably more extreme. I can't remember because it's been a couple of years since I watched it, but it seems like it was the most extreme one.
Yeah.
One of the earlier scenes in this film felt like it was wrapping the film up.
More or less every scene. Yeah, it was really hard to predict when this film was actually going to end. For listeners that might not be familiar with the Sharknado films, I don't know how you found our podcast. This is the 6th one. It started off in 2013 with just your typical run-of-the-mill sci-fi channel fare. They just think of something to do with a shark and they make it as ridiculous as possible. So that was really the first one, was literally just a tornado full of sharks. Pretty basic film. And as the franchise has gone on, they've become more and more ridiculous, and they've also realised that's what people want.
Yeah.
That's what people like. So as you said, this was really like the 3rd act of a film.
Yeah.
It was climax, wrapping up, resolution, but for like an hour and a half.
Dialogue as cheesy as possible.
Yeah, they know exactly what works with the franchise because they've had 5 films to get to this point. So bear that in mind.
Yeah.
When we talk about this film, this is really them at their arc. So, if you didn't get it from the title, this one does feature time travel. The central premise of the film is that they are sort of stuck in time. Now, this was hinted at right at the very end of Sharknado 5, which was called Global Swarming. If anyone hasn't seen that film, spoiler alert, at the end, Finn Shepard's 10-year-old son reappears, played by Dolph Lundgren, and reveals that he's come from the future. So that's our little time travel introduced right at the end of the last film. This film picks up straight where that left off. There's a little bit of a 2001 reference at the beginning with lots of planets and a big sort of monolith, like a dinosaur-shaped monolith. And then loads of dinosaurs bust out and start running everywhere. So it's usually, whenever they do a time jump here, it's pretty easy. They definitely highlight to you straight away where we are through various methods that we'll talk about. But this one was pretty easy.
Straight away, you just get bad CGI, and you're like, yep, this is Sharknado.
It's probably the best it's ever been. That's still not great. Yeah. And I'm sure we'll compare that to the CGI in the Meg, which is obviously this is Sci-Fi Channel capabilities, which they're more about. So we see driving right out of this time warp in his Jeep. I was devastated straight away to learn that Dolph Lundgren was not going to be in this film.
Yeah.
What a fucking cheap shot. Like, they teased it. They sold me a lie. They told me at the end of the last Sharknado that Dolph Lundgren was now going to be in this film. And he wasn't. And I'm still raging.
There's probably some trivia about that on the internet somewhere, that he just wouldn't do it or something.
I can't believe he's above it. But,
I know.
He's definitely done all sorts of shit. Illegitimate scheduling thing, perhaps. Straight away, we get a shark versus a T-Rex fight, which is great. Why not? A T-Rex versus a Meg. Yeah, they know what they're doing. Yeah. They knew when their film was coming out. They could see the way this was going.
Good marketing.
Get Nova here wearing like a weird skull helmet. She kills a T-Rex with loads of knives. We get this brief sort of time travel, just briefly explaining that all the characters that previously were killed off in films are now alive again for some reason.
We have to go back.
This is some sort of time travel afterlife. And that reminds me of a certain favourite TV show of mine that I won't spoil for anyone. That's basically your brief explanation to tell you that basically every and any character you've ever seen in this film is going to be appearing. So yeah, we get there. Of course, a Sharknado starting to appear off the coast, and the meteorite shower starts. He loads up a Meg with loads of sort of meteorites and throws it into the Sharknado. There's some brief explanation here of how if they want to travel forward in time, they have to be going at a particular velocity. And they have this little walkie-talkie thing that lets them, like Back to the Future. Basically, this film is Back to the Future, Quantum Leap, and Lost, all mixed up together. It's the idea of you must travel, you must leap from time to time to time to get back to where you need to get to. So that's the easiest way of explaining it. It's Time-nado, and then suddenly they're catapulted forward. Quite far, quite a leap into medieval times. And there's someone trying to take a sword out of a stone. Not only in medieval times, but in mythical times even. We're introduced here to, I think, maybe the best character and the best performance in the whole film is this sort of evil, sort of witch-type character called the Magnificent Morgana.
She's amazing.
She's played by a drag queen called Alaska Thunderfuck. Now, I'm not familiar with her work. I don't know if she appeared on maybe RuPaul's Drag Race, but in this film she was fantastic. She understood the necessary level of camp that this film deserves and needs so desperately.
Every one of her lines was like something funny, something ridiculous. Something noteworthy.
Yeah, even just stuff like she killed a shark out of the air and just goes, nailed it.
Yeah.
Like, she was amazing. She should have been in a much better film than this. I'd like to see more from her. We do have a character here called Brian, which I didn't really remember, but I think was in the second Sharknado, maybe? Ordinarily, he's a kind of fat white guy with a beard, but then when they leap to medieval times, he transforms into a middle-aged black woman. And there's no reason for this. It's never explained. Other than unpredictability of time travel.
Yeah.
You never know. You might change gender and race by moving forward, a million years in time.
Just setting your expectations for the rest of the film. What crazy things could happen when you travel through time?
It wasn't the weirdest thing that happened in this film, but
No.
at this point it was.
Yeah.
That it was something they glossed over. Just going, it happens. Back in this sort of medieval castle, Neil deGrasse Tyson, famous scientist, is here playing Merlin. All along the way here, Finn has been carrying April's head in a bag, which probably is really confusing to anyone who hasn't seen the previous film. But along the way, April, aka Tara Reid's character, becomes more and more robotic. Not just her acting style, but the character becomes more and more cyborg, and then her head is somehow severed in Sharknado 5. I don't even remember how that happened. But it comes through time, so he's now carrying her head in a bag, and she's there to basically advise and sometimes shoot lasers out of her eyes. So a massive medieval battle ensues with all of the Sharknadoes around the castle here falling on them. They're able to get themselves into a trebuchet and be catapulted into the air, and then Neil deGrasse Tyson appears on a pterodactyl and twats this medieval bucket with its tail, and that gives them the necessary velocity. Yeah, I forgot to mention that Tara Reid entered on a pterodactyl earlier on. That's probably quite a salient point. There are two Tara Reids. This is really confusing.
Pterodactyl.
Yeah. The pterodactyl is called Tara, but there's a Tara Reid, and then there's a Tara Reid head in a bag. I don't know why. I've already.
Who knows what's going on in this film?
I've already made this film too complicated, but so have they. So, Revolutionary America to the strains of Come Out and Play by The Offspring.
Yeah, that was random.
And it took us about 2.5 minutes to realise that two of the characters here were played by the Offspring
Yeah.
because they were a captain and a first mate on a ship with telescopes.
Is it Dexter and Noodles?
It was Dexter and Noodles, and like a lot of Sharknado cameos, the people aren't quite recognisable or famous enough, so they have to say something that relates to the thing that they're famous for.
Yeah.
Hence they go, okay, come out and play.
Yeah, which was the song that was playing.
Yeah. I think everyone remembers Dexter Holland's cameo in Idle Hands where he gets scalped by a disembodied hand. If you remember that, get in touch with us. They find General Washington and Benjamin Franklin. There's all sorts of gags here about Hamilton, the musical, which I really don't know anything about. But if you do, you maybe found this hilarious. They convince General Washington to let them use the cannons to fend off the later Sharknado in revolutionary America, because they say if this Sharknado happens, it will interfere the American Revolution, which means the worst possible thing for these characters, there will be no USA. The USA will be deleted. There's a really weird subplot all throughout this film where Nova sees this time travel mechanism as a way to prevent her grandfather dying when she was a kid, which is like the worst thing that ever happened to her. Her grandfather was killed by a shark, which is something I do remember from the first Sharknado film. She becomes such a badass shark hunter because she hates sharks. Because grandfather was killed by a shark. It's actually quite a decent, if typical, backstory for the character. But the strange notion that she meets her great however many greats grandfather in the late 18th century. So she has the idea that she'll give him a letter to be passed down for, would have to be, 7 or 8 generations, however many, to get to the 90s, where her grandfather would then read this letter and not go fishing, so then not be killed by a shark. This is really dumb. The idea that you would pass on this note that this woman gave you in the 18th century for like the next 180 years, which presumably just says, go fishing on this day, was ludicrous, but they would almost make it work later on. But that's a subplot for you all to be aware of. Finn stops her. He says you can't interfere with time travel, with history, which is obviously a common theme in any travel film, which they will all interfere with history in various ways. They already have interfered with history way more than they should have if we had to believe the rules of Quantum Leap and Bill and Ted and all that sort of stuff. Brian chooses to stay in the revolutionary America. He's now turned back into a white guy with a beard who carries around an oversized baseball bat. I'm not sure why, but he's a history teacher, so he wants to stay and he wants to live history because he's a history teacher.
He bangs on about being a history teacher. He mentions it, probably 3 or 4 times at least.
He's only going to experience like another 40 years of history, maybe even less, if we assume that he can live to what we would consider a normal age to die. I think he's gone all in there and he might regret that. And Benjamin Franklin uses his famous kite, which attracts lightning and blasts them off again through the time warp. And they end up in the Wild West. The Wild West where Dee Snider is the sheriff. And he's involved in a duel with Billy the Kid.
That's amazing.
Vivica Fox finally makes her return to the franchise, playing the character called Sky. So she was last seen in Sharknado 2, if I remember rightly, being electrocuted in the top of a skyscraper. And
she gets killed quite early on in Kill Bill Volume 1. That's what I recognised her from.
She's actually, if you look at the credentials of all the cast of this film, she's done one of the better films if you consider Kill Bill. But she's back here as Sky and she gets some funny lines. She describes herself as a, quote, chocolate blast from the past. Awkward. We also discover Gil, not Dolph Lundgren. Who did they get instead of Dolph Lundgren? They got the guy that played Sherman in American Pie. I can only assume is friends with Tara Reid from that film, and that's how he got into this film. There's no other way.
I must have found out at the last minute that Dolph Lundgren was there, and they're like, who can we get? And she was like, well, I've got a mate.
I've got this guy who's been pestering me for 5 years to be in a Sharknado. Not that anyone would remember him. This is the mark of the Sharknado cameos. They are people that are so allegedly famous that you have to instantly go on IMDb and find out who they are. It's often focused more on American Z-list celebrities, who I'm even less familiar with than British Z-list celebrities. But there he was, the Shermanator. We get more of Tara Reid's severed robot head shooting lasers out of her eyes.
It's always enjoyable.
What am I saying? They managed to defeat this Sharknado. You can see a pattern here. And they get blasted into, well, this is quite a jump again, into the 1950s. People were dancing to surf rock, so that's how you knew it was the 50s.
And the guy called it Shark and Roll Nado. I was like, that's a bit of a tenuous link.
It's rubbish.
Yeah.
After telling Nova not to go interfering with her grandpa, he goes over and hangs out with parents in the 50s, convinces them to lend him their giant laser cannon. How they have that, I'm not sure. Straight out of, Plan 9 or something, they have this 50s sci-fi laser cannon which they're going to use. Obviously his dad, Sharknado 4, is played by David Hasselhoff, but sadly the Hoff, along with Dolph Lundgren, maybe they were doing something together. Neither of them were going to be involved in this. Very surprised David Hasselhoff was busy. But yeah, he agrees to let his son, didn't know he was his son, but let his son use the Cadillac, the classic 50s Cadillac, and the idea is that they're going to fast forward now to 2013, the time when the first Sharknado happened, and prevent the whole franchise from happening. So we end up fast forwarding, but it's not to 2013, and the reason that we know this is that two teenage girls walk past the camera.
She just very quickly goes, "Are you going to the Spice Girls concert, or are you going to watch Titanic for the 10th time?"
Yeah.
Very quickly places it in 1997.
I mean, I knew straight away it was 1997. I don't think a lot of people would. Obviously, people younger than us might not know that those things were popular in 97.
Yeah.
I think they were counting on their audience being roughly our age. Are you going to go to see the Spice Girls, or are you going to go and see Titanic? The two options in 1997. But yeah, we discover that obviously Nova has interfered with the calibrations in order to go back to 1997, because this is when her grandpa gets killed by a shark. So she is interfering with time. I think what makes this worse is that she actually goes back and finds herself as a child. Now, if we know anything from time travel films, that's quite dangerous, to go back and find yourself and meet yourself.
Indeed.
All sorts of paradoxes and things can collapse on you, but
loopholes.
This film obviously wasn't going to get that complicated, but it did warn us. It warned us about interfering with time and history, because it can go bad. So, remember we talked about the letter? Ancestor must have picked this up and glued it back together, because it was in frame on the boat.
Yeah.
I thought this was shockingly clever for this franchise. Her grandfather says, "Yeah, it's an old family heirloom, it's been handed down through the generations, so I put it on the wall of this boat just in case." I couldn't actually read what it said in the letter, but I imagined something along the lines of, "I am from the future, don't go fishing in 1997. Go seize the Spice Girls or Titanic instead." And it also reveals that the reason why he nicknamed her Nova is because the letter was signed by Nova, so she named herself. She ends up steering her grandpa's boat into rocks and crashing it, and realises this is what kills my grandpa. I'm the one that caused the crash that killed my grandpa. And I started to try and figure this out, but I thought there's no point. We're just going to move on in a minute anyway, so let's not overthink this. She gives her Inigo Montoya speech. "I am Nova. You killed my grandpa. Prepare to die," which is funny. Again, aimed at people our age. They end up being able to sort of catch a shark on a fishing rod and kind of hang on to it so that the shark propels them into the future. It must have been a really fast shark, jumping the shark, if you like, as this franchise has done repeatedly, annually. And they end up going into the future, but it's not 2013. It's 20,013.
The 18,000-year leap was more than I was expecting the leap to be.
I'll give them props, because usually when films have a dystopian setting, they only usually go about 15 or 20 years ahead.
Yeah.
Blade Runner, Escape from New York.
Terminator
typically 15, 20, 30. Sharknado wasn't going to take any chances. They were going 18,000 years into the future. So all the buildings are sort of broken apart, and it's very quiet. We see that the sharks have now taken over the planet. They are robo-sharks, mecha sharks, of course, sort of silvery floating things. And then we start to see people with guns approaching in sort of silvery clothes, and we're like, oh no, there are humans left. There are some humans left, and it's the most terrifying future you can possibly imagine. A planet populated entirely by Aprils. What is it, Mark?
Planet of the Aprils.
That's right.
That's one of the best lines in the film.
It must be the best pun in this film. It's fucking brilliant. I really think they're starting to get the hang of this by the 6th film. Planet of the Aprils. Can you imagine a more terrifying future than a planet populated by Tara Reid and Tara Reid only, or robotic clones of Tara Reid?
Yeah.
Can you imagine a stony-faced, expressionless, emotionless Tara Reid?
I don't think it gets any more terrifying than that.
All these clone Aprils are ruled by Queen April, who has a sort of pointy Statue of Liberty hat. Original April is in like a Perspex coffin, Sleeping Beauty, and she's being kept for some reason. Various Tara Reids start fighting with other Tara Reids. A chainsaw is out again. Sky gets frozen in carbonite just when you thought they'd ran out of Star Wars jokes. Queen April explodes, and this finally propels them back to 2013. And what I really like here is that you get the opening couple of shots of the first film in perfect continuity. Go to the armory on the boat and they get like grenade launchers and chainsaws and like M16s and stuff, and they just start gunning down the Sharknado.
One of them's got like a Tommy gun or something.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
I think this last sequence here really epitomises Sharknado in all its insanity, because we go inside the Sharknado and we get this incredible history montage. It's tough to explain.
Figures from history just flying around, like Hitler and
like Muhammad Ali,
yeah.
Confucius,
yeah,
all sorts of people, and we even get some cameos here. Like Confucius is played by James Hong from Big Trouble in Little China, and one of the boxers is played by Shad Gaspard, who is an ex-wrestler. So yes, every single Sharknado film does have a wrestler in it, even if you have to dive into a historical Sharknado. Amelia Earhart, Caesar, Viking King, Muhammad Ali, Joe Louis, Marie Antoinette, Confucius, Cleopatra. Yeah, insanity. Basically, imagine if your only exposure to history had been watching this little montage.
Yeah.
This is the way to teach the world about the history of civilization.
Quickly, inside of a Sharknado.
This was very potted. This is Sharknado when Sharknado is getting it right and firing on all cylinders, and I've
all the while there's like Finn getting hit in the head by a sink, and
yes,
lots of action going on.
Well, because Queen Robot April has come back from the future, and she is now flying a robot shark, so her head's like sticking out of the mouth. Robo Tara Reid head that we've known throughout the film is also stuck in the mouth of a regular shark. So these two sharks with two versions of Tara Reid inside the sharks fighting each other in midair, which is insane. They eventually decide to do what I thought they would do all along, and that's detonate Robo April's head.
And she says, "Ready to blow my mind?"
Yeah, because she's gone on about all along how she's got a nuclear core inside her, and I thought, well, obviously she may as well detonate, because really if the first Sharknado never happens, then she never becomes a robot anyway, so surely she's perfectly expendable. So that's what they do, and we end up right back in the bar from the first film. This was as close as it gets to an emotionally touching scene here for anyone that's followed the franchise. We get all the old favourites. We get all the old characters from the whole franchise. Mark McGrath, the guy from Sugar Ray that was in the second film. Gary Busey, who played April's dad in the fourth film, I believe. And we even get, really quite sadly, we get footage of John Hurd, aka Kevin's dad from Home Alone. We get footage of him cut in from the first film because he died last year, so we get that as well. And we even get the old weatherman Al Roker, who has appeared, I think, in every Sharknado film as well, telling us that it was going to be a lovely day.
Yeah.
No bad weather
no clouds,
around.
Nothing.
Oh, and also Sky is running for president.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
Just watching that on the TV.
Yeah. And that's it. They decide they all live happily ever after. So everyone that's ever died is now not dead. it feels like the right way to wrap up the franchise, since it's not too ridiculous to really control anyway.
Yeah.
I felt like they fought ridiculousness with more ridiculousness, and I'm quite impressed they managed to wrap up the whole 6-film arc in an almost a satisfying way. I was quite pleased with how they managed to wrap it all up. What were your overall impressions of The Last Sharknado?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous, good fun, like you would expect from this type of film. I feel like my impression is going to be slightly different to yours, because this is only the second one I've seen, so I don't have the whole package. You've seen it from start to finish, but yeah, hilarious, ridiculous, entertaining.
Does it make you want to go back and watch the ones you missed?
Yeah, I do want to watch the other ones, especially the first one. I kind of feel like I need to see the original, like, surely.
Well, you're sort of 1/12 of the way there.
Yeah.
You've already seen the first 10 minutes. Yeah, I think this is good whether you've followed the Sharknado films or not. Like I say, the first couple of Sharknado films were so shit they were good, and they gradually got both more shit and ridiculous, but also a little bit more ambitious every time as well. So yeah, we're going to put in all these bad puns and these references to other films that are obviously much better, and yeah, we have Z-list cameos, but that kind of became its thing over time, and it was something that actually no other film really blend this all these elements together. No other film would probably want to or be able to. So I feel like this was a great way to wrap up the whole franchise. What started as a ridiculous, dumb idea, dumber and dumber, but bigger and bigger, and
as insane as possible.
Yeah, what they did well. They knew what their niche was. They were playing with this tiny sort of budget, TV CGI. And after a while, you don't even question it. It's just like, well, this is just what these films look like. It doesn't look like a real shark, but I wouldn't expect it to. Leaping from time frame to time frame, I was always wondering where we're going to go next.
Yeah.
Who's going to be a really shit cameo that I'm going to have to look up on my phone?
It was just non-stop.
They didn't need to, and that's why the first couple of Sharknado films aren't as good, because they did attempt a little bit of sort of traditional plot and character development. But after a while, they abandoned it and said, look, we're going to stick with Finn and April and much and Nova, and this is going to be our core characters that people know now from the first couple of films.
Yeah. And
we're just going to go mental and we'll have all these different types of tornadoes and stuff. So
have as much fun as possible.
Yeah, and this was a lot of fun. And the end of an era. It was time to end it. I don't want them to do any more. But this is a great way to go out for the Sharknado films. And yeah, I would, if anyone's listening to this show, they probably like the Sharknado films already. But if you haven't, check them all out. They're all pretty good fun. So that was The Last Sharknado. It's about time. Next, we're going to move on to talk about The Meg. A couple of weeks ago, me and Mark, we went on a top secret field trip out to the cinema to see The Meg on the big screen in 3D.
Yeah.
As probably as many of you did as well. We saw this in 3D, which I usually begrudge because it costs a fortune, but this is exactly the type of film you do want to see in 3D, I think, if you are being forced into it, which I am. Showcase, thank you. But we went to see The Meg, which, of course, is the big monster movie for this year, certainly the biggest shark movie that's come along in the last couple of years. It is based on the novel from all the way back in 1997, called Meg, A Novel of Deep Terror, which was a really popular book from the late 90s. So ever since then, 20 years have now passed, and they've finally been able to make a film out of this book. For a long time, Eli Roth was attached to direct, which is when I had the most interest in it. Mm-hmm. But then when Eli Roth dropped out and Jason Statham dropped in, my interest levels dropped out as well. So what could have been, I'm sure, with Eli Roth, a sort of a suspenseful horror thriller, clearly with Statham on board was not going to be that. So probably weren't looking forward to this as I was here. Weren't expecting this film. What were your impressions of The Meg, and when you heard there was going to be an enormous shark film here?
Pretty much what I expected. Very generic, thin on plot.
Yeah.
But also ridiculous and full on, because you would expect that from any film that has Jason Statham in it.
He's the indicator, isn't he?
Yeah.
It's a good thing, because when I heard Eli Roth, I thought, oh, this is going to be good. And when I heard Jason Statham, I thought, this is going to be shit, but I still want to see it. Like, definitely, Jason Statham versus a shark. It's a very different type of film, but still one that's going to have a lot of appeal, probably to a lot more people. I'm sure Eli Roth would have made it much, much gorier, and people may be aware that this film was meant to be R-rated, and the director cut all those scenes at the last minute in order to get a PG-13 rating, and Jason Statham himself has actually said he wasn't really happy about that. He signed on for a bit more of a graphic and gory film, so... It's this weird kind of contrast between the film with Eli Roth attached and the film with Jason Statham attached, but it sounds like they both wanted a gorier film than we ended up getting. But
I feel like they, because of the budget was so huge, I think they felt like we don't want to limit our audience too much.
I mean, this film is a blockbuster and it's here to make money. And when last we checked, this film had grossed around $467 million worldwide, which is a fucking lot of money. So yeah, we can see now what kind of film this was meant to be, and obviously it's been successful. But the film it does open with a flashback sequence showing Jason Statham rescuing some of his fellow crew and sailors. He's like a Marine or a Navy SEAL or something, like an underwater explorer type character. They're down in the Mariana Trench, which is where a lot of this film is set, the deepest place on Earth. So he's faced with this tough dilemma where he's only going to save a couple of his crew, and they're going to resent him because he let plenty of other people die. Kind of reminds me of the opening of Cliffhanger, where Sylvester Stallone has to drop a woman off a mountain in order to save someone else.
Yeah.
Don't you drop her, Gabe! Later on, he's discharged under what is quoted as being pressure-induced psychosis. So that's what made him make this terrible decision. 5 years later, we are introduced to this underwater research facility called Manor One. And this is the first of many similarities to the film Deep Blue Sea. But this is an underwater research facility looking into sharks and deep sea things. One of our main leads here is Chinese actor called Su Yin. She's the head biologist. And we're also introduced to the guy who owned the whole place, Jack Morris, billionaire, played by Rainn Wilson.
He was in The American Office.
He was Dwight in The American Office. Yeah. Many people will know him from that. Funny guy, certainly in The Office, and he tries his best here as well. But yeah, the idea is that he's funded this whole underwater research facility into the Mariana Trench to find out what's really down there. You know, like a certain James Cameron would do as well. So I wonder what he thought of this film. We get a great introductory scene really where people are going down in a smaller sort of craft down into the Mariana Trench, and I was really impressed straight away, not only by the special effects and the CGI here, but it was really great in 3D. Like we were floating through the deep sea, and there were jellyfishes coming at you and fish. This is a really expensive film.
This was really worth watching in 3D. I haven't watched a 3D film for a few years, but it was worth paying for, I'd say. It worked really well. And
this film had a budget of around 130 million, which shows, I think, the CGI here is brilliant. I don't know who did it, but...
it's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's really convincing CGI, especially compared to Sharknado, of course, you know, but it even holds up with, you know, the real big hitters like Planet of the Apes and Peter Jackson films in recent memory. It's really, really top quality special effects. So I can't knock the Meg for that. It looks fantastic, and it looked fantastic on the big screen as well. So the little underwater sub comprises of course, Jonas's ex-wife. It's Jason Statham's ex-wife. Japanese character who I think was in Heroes, and a big sort of beardy Norwegian guy. So it's typical sort of multinational research crew. And they get attacked by something massive in the Mariana Trench. Meanwhile, Mac and Su Yin's dad go to find Jonas, who is exactly as you expect. He's lying down on a beach in Thailand with like a straw hat over his face and a cocktail in one mouth. It's real...
the most cliche kind of
action hero
scene.
Yeah, it's like action hero that's he's retired from the force or he's retired from the army and he just gets drunk on the beach. It's so cliched. He had this whole scene where, they go into his apartment and he said, "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me to do this. I'm going to say no. You're going to have a drink with me. I'm going to say no. You're going to tell me I've got to rescue someone. I'm still going to say no." And then they tell him what's happened and he's like, "Okay, let's go." Very easily persuaded because, of course, my ex-wife is down there. Yeah. So he's got to save her really, really quickly. We get Jason Statham to Manor 1, we get him suited up, we get him his physical from the doctor who was responsible for discharging him for pressure-induced psychosis, so there's a bit of tension there, certainly. We're also introduced to Soo Yin's young daughter, and he has a bit of back and forth with her. We get our final reveal of the Meg when Soo Yin is down there. She's looking for the stranded submarine, and she gets attacked by a giant squid initially and sucks on to her
clambers around the whole ship.
Yeah, just encloses it, and you think that's bad. Then the Meg comes flying over the top, and what's quite difficult in this film is obviously it's a massive shark. We know that it's massive, and the posters are quite good at getting that point across, but when it's underwater, everything looks as big as everything else, pretty much. You're only as big as the fish or the rock next to. And if you're in like the middle of the ocean, there are no rocks or things. So we have to imagine that this submarine is quite big. This giant squid is quite big. So therefore, the Meg must be really fucking big. So our first reveal, I don't think, does a great job of getting the scale across, but no pun intended. But we do see the Meg, and of course, Soo Yin has got more than she bargained for here, gone down to try and rescue them. So Jason Statham hops in his submersible and he goes down to rescue his ex-wife. Sadly, Toshi, the Japanese character, dies because there's just no time to rescue all three of them. There's only time to rescue two of them, otherwise they'll all die. Mirroring, obviously, the dilemma from the beginning of the film, but Jonas doesn't have to make the call. Toshio makes the call and he essentially commits suicide. And that's the end of poor Toshio. We get back to Manor 1. This is where we get all of our exposition. They realise that the Mariana Trench actually was not the deepest part of Earth.
You can go under it.
You can go under it. There's a very thin film of fog that they never noticed before. And that's actually, you go under that and then you're in the lower part.
Is it like hydrogen or nitrogen or something?
Yeah, it was like
I can't remember what it was.
A thin sort of layer of some gas or something that it doesn't really make sense. Like, if it's the seabed, it's the seabed. Like, we've sent things down there. We know that's the bottom of the earth. Like, you can't tell me. But unfortunately, them coming back up from there opened up a gateway for Meg to follow them up.
It did.
It's what Jack refers to as a thermal superhighway. It means the Meg has been released. Well, one of the more memorable scenes from the film and from the marketing and the trailers certainly is the scene with the little girl. Soo Yin's little daughter is just skipping through one of the see-through tunnels, and she stops and looks out of the tube. And then you see the full silhouette and shape of the Meg coming out of the shadows. And that's cool. That's when you get the real sense of how big the Meg is. And I think that maybe should have been the reveal itself.
It comes directly at the screen and it puts its teeth onto the glass.
Yeah.
That looked really cool in the cinema.
One of the high points of the film was this, put you in mind obviously of Jaws and stuff like that, where the sense you got, a real sense of scale, this huge creature. And it bit the presumably unbreakable plexiglass tube.
Yeah. It
bit it, and obviously everyone in the cinema went, "Oh!" And it left teeth marks on the glass, which showed how large its jaws were. Mm. That was excellent, actually. That belonged in a better movie. Straight away, of course, little girl highlights this to everyone. I think there's something out there, and
there's a big fish out there.
They come through and obviously have a look at it and go, "Yep, that's definitely a Meg." So they need to obviously think of a way to deal with this thing. If it makes it to the coastal areas, there's going to be mayhem, and they'll get on a boat and go out into the open water. They get this pretty cool looking shark cage, which is just this sort of plastic or fiberglass cylinder with like neon lights on it as well, so you can you can be inside and still see perfectly 360 degrees. And the idea is that someone will go in that cage and have a lethal sort of poison that they can stick into the shark and inject it, and then that'll be game over, which obviously seems a bit too easy. considering we're not that far in. This is quite a cool extended scene. It takes time, but there's all sorts of debating on the boat about who's going to go and who's not going to go, and Jason Statham wants to go, but Soo Yin says she's going to go, and there's this... I know blockbusters always have to shoehorn in a romantic subplot, but Jason Statham and this Soo Yin character had some of the least romantic chemistry that I've ever seen.
It was so forced.
Jason Statham had more chemistry with the shark than he did with this woman. Like, it was just like they were from...
He definitely got more sexual with the shark.
He got more boners. And it's like there's even this really there's this awkward scene, isn't there, where she goes into his quarters and he's just wearing a towel, which I think this
like staring at him.
I think he wrote this into his contract that he wanted to get his top off because he's in his 40s now and he wants to show that he's still sculpted. So he's just standing there like glistening from the shower, and she walks in and then looks up and goes, "Oh God," puts her hands over her eyes and like, "Oh no, oh my," and oh my God, this.
And then
is...
when she leaves, she's like still peeping back through the little circular window, and someone catches her, and she's like, "Oh."
For a second, you almost thought like, "Oh, there's a character here. One of the main characters here is a woman, and she's actually like the head scientist, and she knows the most about sharks, and she's like the most important character." And then she just ogles Jason Statham's moist torso. 2 steps forward, 1 steps back, I think, with this. But, just any kind of interaction between these is so awkward, like little jokes about who's going to get the shark and who's not. Mm. When he says shark, he really means dick. I think we know. Just like in Jaws, the shark represents the affair they had,
Yeah, the phallic symbol.
Yeah, it's out there. Sexual tension through sharks. Yeah, we get this extended, really cool action scene with the Meg circling their boat, and then the plastic cylinder goes in the water, and they tow it on a line, and the Megalodon chases it. Some really cool shots here. Again, great effects. And eventually, she gets the lance into the mouth of the shark. It's dead.
Poisoned it.
They winch it up, hang it over the boat, film over. Except it's not, because this is like 30 minutes into the film.
Yeah.
And this is the main thing I don't understand. What happens next is that another Megalodon jumps out of the water. It's roughly twice the size, maybe a little more than twice the size of the one that's already come up. It comes out of the water and eats the other one.
Yeah.
And now this is the Megalodon that they're going to be dealing with. What was the point?
Why did you need a second one?
There's no need at all. Other than
we knew it wasn't going to be the end of the film.
It was half an hour in.
We weren't fooling anyone.
Nobody thought... I thought it was more likely that the shark would come back to life.
Yeah.
But they went an even more convoluted route of having another Meg. Where's the logic here? Why is there 2? Isn't it meant to be an almost thought extinct animal? Like...
It's not the Megs.
Well,
it is.
Will be next film.
Yeah.
Trust me. So this is just totally arbitrary, the need to have 2 of these things, and to have the second one really only marginally bigger than the first one. What the hell is the point? The first one was impressive enough. Just to have that do more, come up with more for that. It just seems like they were running out of ideas half an hour in, which is not a good sign. There you go. The Meg is not dead. There's a new Meg, and it's a little bit bigger. All the way through this film, by the way, there is a black character. They're constantly teasing all through the film that he's going to get the Samuel L. Jackson treatment from Deep Blue Sea, a.k.a. get eaten, having an obnoxious monologue in a wide shot. And they tease this repeatedly. He's on the boat just saying the most pointless dialogue. Hey, there's a shark over there. There's a shark. Who's a big shark? Who are you trying to tell me is a big shark? This dialogue is nothing. There's no... So he's just saying words repeatedly. Hey man, how are you going to tell me this is a shark? I know this is a shark. The dialogue was so meaningless and vapid that I thought, well, he must be about to be eaten. And it just never happened. That's like, there's no payoff here. And a strange twist, the token black character makes it all the way through the film, doesn't get eaten, really only comes into mild peril.
Yeah.
So there you go. Maybe he'll be in the sequel. So there you go. It's half an hour in. We reset the film, essentially, with a slightly bigger Meg. They all go back to the station, and Jack Morris, the billionaire, says, okay, look, right, this isn't our responsibility. I tell you what, I've called all the authorities in China, Australia. They're going to call in, the big guns, the military, the National Guard. They're all going to sort it out. You guys shouldn't have to do this. I'm sorry, I've put you in enough danger already. And they're like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, thanks for that. Bullshit. He never did any of that stuff. He just wants to cover it up so that he doesn't get any lawsuits from people who've been eaten by the Meg that he unleashed into the world. So he takes a very small squad of sort of Marines out in a dinghy, and they end up blowing up a whale. And he's like, yeah, we got him, boys, we got him. And can you get me one of the teeth? I want one of the teeth from the Megalodon, to put on my wall. Oh, hasn't got any teeth. What do you mean? It's a whale. Yeah, so obviously he gets eaten by the Meg, as he should. He's the guy, from Aliens who wants to bring it back alive. He's that guy. He's the character, the shit-eating capitalist billionaire. Yeah, back on the station. There's again more of this ham-fisted romantic subplot between Jason Statham and Soo Yin. Really awkwardly, her small daughter is encouraging this relationship. Keeps raising her eyebrows suggestively, like Roger Moore, like a little Chinese Roger Moore, saying that, you should go talk to my mum. I think she likes you, and just like, doo, doo, with the eyebrows going up, ludicrous. So they all decide, they needed to hunt the Meg again, because they find out Jack's been killed. One of the other real standout scenes from the film, and one of the most fun scenes where I think they get the tone right, is the whole beach scene. This is straight out of Jaws, straight out of Piranha 3D as well, probably more so in terms of the tone, but this is a massive beach. I want to say Thailand or Hong Kong, somewhere in Asia. It's one of the most densely populated tourist beaches in the world. This is where the Meg is heading. Yeah. Of course, it smells tourists. They really work overtime in this scene to introduce many minor characters who are obviously going to be eaten.
Including the dog.
Oh, yeah. There's a couple getting married on a boat with Pippin, a small dog, swimming about. There's a fat kid with a lollipop asking his mum if he can go and swim, and she goes, all right then. There's a couple of guys zorbing across the beach.
Oh, yeah.
They really go to town like this. And you're like, well, all these people are dying. But we just want you to know basically who they are. So it's the Vegas characterizations: fat kid, horny teenagers, zorbing adrenaline seekers, small dog. Typically they survive, and Pippin did in this. Pippin starts swimming off of the boat and he sees the Meg coming towards him, which is a cool juxtaposition. Tiny dog, massive shark.
There was a cool shot. It was like a bird's eye view of a woman paddleboarding, and you could see the Meg going under her. Yeah. And it just looked quite cool seeing it like from above and how big it was compared to her. Because before we'd seen it kind of underwater a lot.
Yeah. You got real scale here.
Yeah, you got some scale.
And they're really high up where you just see a sea of like rubber rings and parasols. This was really cool. Yeah. I feel like the director visually he knew what he was doing. There's actually a good red herring here when the lads on the pontoon, they all stand up and go, oh, and they point, and you think they're pointing at the Meg, and it's actually just some girls with big boobs and small bikinis, so and that was straight out of like Piranha 3D. I thought that was good. But the Meg just goes ballistic. Yeah, starts ripping through this beach. People are falling off jetties, climbing on jetties. There's a great extended scene where we get a POV shot from inside the zorbing ball. If anyone doesn't know what zorbing is, it's when a person goes inside a see-through inflatable ball, massive one. He's frantically running like a hamster in this ball to get away, and the shark's coming up, and it just snaps it, and it pops the ball towards the screen, and in 3D, and with that noise, everyone went, "Ooh!" That was a cool little spot. But what they do, they drop a whale call into the sea, a couple of miles offshore to draw it away from the beach again. So literally everyone's getting massacred on this beach, and then they drop this thing in. And the Meg just like does a 180 and goes straight back out to sea. And then we get the climactic action scene of the film, which is Jason Statham in his submersible versus a Meg, in what he describes as man versus Meg. which is amazing. They're in these, what they call gliders, actually, and Soo-Yin is in one as well, so they're going to team up, but it's mainly Jason Statham here. The scene also reminded me a lot of the end of Rambo 3, if anyone remembers in that one. It's tank versus helicopter at the end of that film. And I felt small submarine versus prehistoric shark, similar feel of Rambo. How manly can we get here? You know, a cockney with a knife in a submarine swearing at a massive shark. I guess Soo-Yin was getting hot for this because, you know, it's what we've been leading to here. There's an extended chase where the shark is chasing him through kind of coral and rock formations in and out. It's quite cool. It felt like it could be kind of out of space, you know, dogfight, barrel roll, stuff like that. And eventually he manages to latch on to the side of the Meg, and in maybe the most ridiculous part of the film, the Meg jumps out of the water, maybe about 50 foot or so out of the water, up towards, again, a bird's eye camera. And as it gets close to the camera, Jason Statham plunges a harpoon into its eyeball. I feel like that will be memed, or it's memorable. That imagery, ludicrous, but memorable. This is Jason Statham riding a flying prehistoric shark into the air.
Spearing its eyeball.
And spearing its eyeball, as you'd expect. So they all end up, obviously, on the boat, and Jason Statham says, you know, I need a vacation, and then the little girl's like, oh, my mum probably wants a vacation too, wink wink. And basically Jason Statham's going to be like her new daddy. And
was that like a Terminator 2 reference when he said, I need a vacation?
I think it was just action movie reference. Yeah. I'm sure Schwarzenegger has said it. Jean-Claude Van Damme said that maybe in Street Fighter. I need a vacation. So there it was. The Meg, in all its dumb glory there. What were your overall impressions of The Meg, having seen it also on a cinema in 3D?
Yeah, I think seeing it on the big screen 3D really helped. Really, the effects really came to life, especially in 3D. The shark looked bigger because it was on a big screen.
Yeah, it's vital, isn't it, really? Yeah.
So that was really cool. I think the CGI was really good. The plot was really thin, but that's exactly what I was expecting. And there were some good lines, there were some funny lines.
I thought it was dumb fun, brainless fun, almost exactly as I was expecting as well. Like I said, when Jason Statham signed on, that puts out a real clear signal to everybody about what this film's going to be, and it was what I thought it was going to be. Sometimes a little too dumb, sometimes not fun enough, you know. There was downtime, there was repetitiveness. Like I said, that whole reset thing halfway through really annoyed me. It just felt really pointless. We've killed the Meg, and there's another Meg. Why? I have no idea. It just felt like they'd run out of ideas 40 minutes in. That can't be the case, can it? Maybe it was. So it's certainly style over substance. I thought visually amazing film, and people should see it on the big screen. I probably wouldn't have any inclination to watch it again in my house. No, really.
Not going to have the same effect at all.
No, I think once was enough, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it was bad enough to be good, really, as I was hoping it would be. At some points it was just by the numbers, generic shark movie, generic action movie, I thought.
It kind of wasn't cheesy enough to be in that category, although it was, but like not quite enough to be high up in that category of cheese.
Yeah.
But also wasn't a genuinely good enough action film to be genuinely good. You know, it sort of sat in between. Like it did a bit of cheese and a bit of good action, but it didn't fall one way or the other.
I think they thought that they were just making a fun movie.
Yeah,
that was what they were. That was the marketing. Like the posters were, the logo's bright green, and there were people on the beach, people surfing. So they didn't want to make themselves look like they were going to be Jaws or anything like that. This is going for exactly the same tone as Deep Blue Sea. Maybe it wasn't as in touch with its own cheesiness as much. Like you said, we're not being a bad movie or a crap movie. We're being a fun movie. Well, that sometimes means the same thing. You know, call it what you want. You either go for dumb and big and flashy, or a proper shark film like Jaws. But I did like it. I did enjoy it on the big screen. But I mean, it's so no pun intended. It's so shallow that I don't think it would stand up to a rewatch. I felt. And, people can correct me if I'm wrong, but films more and more now are tending to deliberately set their films in China and cast quite big Chinese stars in order to cash in on the Chinese market, which is becoming a huge market now for box office. Films like Pacific Rim notably made all their money in China. I think they were probably doing that with this one, and it seems like they've made most of their revenue from China and overseas, made a lot more than they have done in America and in Europe, I think. So I think we'll undoubtedly get a Meg 2. Biggest shark movie of the year, undoubtedly one of the biggest movies overall, and one of the biggest ship movies of the year as well. If you had to travel back in time in some sort of tornado and stop one of these films from being made, would you choose to save The Meg or The Last Sharknado?
I really enjoyed both films, but I think I'd probably choose to save Sharknado. Part of a series that's become iconic in certain nerdy circles.
Yeah.
End of the series, so it's essential. The film needed to exist. They needed to tie it up.
A bad film than The Meg? Obviously, they were trying to make it bad, so it's hard to say.
It's badder in a better way.
But did you enjoy it more?
I think so, yeah. I laughed more, I think. Very, very schlocky.
Yeah, I agree. The Last Sharknado, I've seen them all, and Sharknado 6 was one of the best of all 6 of them. The Meg was good. It's the beginning probably of a whole new franchise that can take over from Sharknado, I'm sure, but just like you, I enjoyed Sharknado a lot more, and I laughed. I was meant to, when they wanted me to, and I think a lot of the times I was laughing at the Meg, I was laughing at it because it was misjudged or inept. I didn't laugh at any of the deliberate jokes in The Meg because they were not funny at all. Yeah, I'm excited about this new franchise and where it can go, and it's obviously a much bigger shark, which is exciting, a kaiju if you like, but I would say Sharknado, the better bad shark movie here. If you enjoyed either of these films, then pretty easy, these recommendations, aren't they? Of course, Jaws, if you haven't seen Jaws from 1974, I don't know where you've been living.
The most essential shark film of all time.
If you're going to watch any shark film or even any film, so if you want daft shark films, then you want to be watching Deep Blue Sea and Jaws: The Revenge, starring Michael Caine. In terms of Sharknado, you've got 5 others there. Those are the only 5 other films that have tornadoes made of sharks. There's countless sci-fi drivel that doesn't nail it like Sharknado does. I don't think I would recommend any time travel films based on Sharknado 6, but obviously they're all out there. Back to the Future, we mentioned. Yeah, Bill and Ted, they're all out there as well. But mainly I would recommend Deep Blue Sea if you enjoyed The Meg or Sharknado, because that's a super cheesy, tongue-in-cheek killer shark film as well. So if you have enjoyed today's episode, please do subscribe to the podcast. We do release 2 new episodes a month, and if you're subscribed, you'll be the first to hear about them. And you can also go back and check out previous episodes that we've done. If you want to get in touch with us, let us know what you thought of these films, ask us any questions about any bad movies, or even suggest future bad movies for us to review. You can get in touch on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Schlock Tactics. If you could give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, that would be brilliant as well. We are 5-star rated, and if you can help us keep that going, that'd be great. But